I never meant to fall for her, but every stolen glance, every quiet touch, made it impossible to walk away. The story opens with a moment that feels ordinary on the surface, yet quietly unforgettable. The male narrator, a young man in his mid-twenties, finds himself in a place where life seems to slow down, perhaps a small cafe on a rainy evening, a quiet library corner, or even a serene garden where he often clears his mind. The setting must be painted richly, not just as a backdrop, but as a reflection of his inner state. He's someone observant, not in a rush, and carrying the kind of sincerity that makes him notice details others overlook. She enters, a woman in her early 40s, confident in the way she carries herself but touched by a subtle vulnerability that's not immediately visible. Maybe it's in the way she brushes a strand of hair back when she thinks no one is looking, or how she exhales as if carrying more than she's willing to admit. He notices. He always notices. Their first interaction is small, even polite, but it lingers. She might ask him something simple, directions, a recommendation, or even just a passing acknowledgement, and yet it feels heavier than words should. Her voice has a warmth, low and steady, that stays with him long after she turns away. For him, it's not attraction in the usual sense, it's recognition, like stumbling upon a melody he somehow already knows. The key in this part is restraint. Their eyes meet, but the moment doesn't stretch into cliché. Instead, it's broken by something real, a small laugh, a polite nod, or even a silence that says more than words could. He feels the difference immediately. She is older, her presence carrying life's experience, while he, younger, senses both admiration and curiosity. The age gap is unspoken but undeniable, adding a quiet tension to the air. The narrator reflects inwardly, telling the audience not just what happened but how it made him feel, that peculiar blend of calm and electricity that only arrives once in a great while. He describes her presence through sensory fragments, the faint scent of her perfume carried by the breeze, the texture of her voice lingering like velvet, the slight curve of her smile that feels almost private. The first keynote closes with him watching her walk away, not in longing, but in quiet awareness. Something has shifted, and though neither of them names it, both sense it. The audience is left with the weight of that unspoken spark, the beginning of a connection that feels as fragile as it is inevitable. The days that follow their first encounter leave him unsettled in a quiet way. He tells himself it was nothing, just a passing interaction, the kind that happens every day. Yet her face returns to him at odd moments, like the aftertaste of a memory he can't shake. He remembers the steadiness in her gaze, the way she seemed both graceful and unknowingly distant, as though she lived in a world a little heavier than his. Then, unexpectedly, she reappears. It could be the same cafe, the same library corner, or another familiar place where routine bends into fate. This time, she lingers. There's no rush in her manner, she sets down her bag, maybe orders tea, and for a while, she simply exists in the same space as him. The air feels heavier, not in an uncomfortable way, but in the way silence becomes charged when words want to surface. He notices the small things first. How her fingers trace the rim of her cup absent-mindedly. How her eyes soften when they fall on the pages of a book, or how her shoulders relax when she exhales. She seems less guarded now, though there's still a quiet shield around her, the kind people wear after carrying unspoken stories. Their conversation starts almost accidentally. Perhaps she recognizes him and offers a polite smile, or maybe he's the one who breaks the silence with a small observation about the weather, the book she's reading, or even a kind gesture like offering to help when she drops something. What matters is that it's effortless. Words spill not with force, but with the ease of two people realizing they share a rhythm. As they talk, he finds himself more drawn to the contrasts between them. Her voice is calm, deliberate, shaped by years of speaking with certainty, while his carries the energy of youth, curious and unpolished but sincere. She speaks about her life cautiously, revealing pieces rather than the whole, a mention of work, a fragment of her travels, the outline of her day. He senses depth behind every word, and though he doesn't press, he listens intently, making her feel seen. And then, without meaning to, their bodies lean closer across the small distance. Not touching, not yet, but her hand rests closer to his on the table than before, and when she looks up, their eyes lock with a quiet intensity. It's not bold. It's hesitant. But in that hesitation lies the unspoken awareness that this is no ordinary conversation. Keynote 2 closes with an unfinished note, a laugh, a shared smile, a glance held half a second longer than it should be. The audience feels the gentle shift. What began as coincidence has started to bloom into connection. Their meetings become less accidental and more quietly anticipated. He doesn't admit it out loud, but each time he enters the cafe or library, he finds himself scanning the room, wondering if she'll be there. And more often than not, she is, not waiting for him, but present, as though life has orchestrated these encounters just enough to blur coincidence into intention. This time, their conversation flows more naturally. They share small observations, tiny details about their lives. She speaks about her love for quiet mornings, the comfort of ritual, coffee in the same cup, a book kept by the bed. He talks about his restless energy, the way he's always chasing something new, uncertain yet eager to explore. The differences between them should have been a gap, but instead, they form a bridge. Her steadiness balances his curiosity, his openness draws her out of her shell. Then, it happens. A small, almost insignificant moment, but one that changes the texture of their connection. She laughs at something he says, a soft, genuine laugh that loosens the careful reserve in her posture. As she does, her hand rests briefly on his forearm, light as a feather, uncalculated. It could be dismissed as nothing, yet he feels it immediately. The warmth of her touch seeps into him, steady and grounding, while his heart stumbles in his chest. For a second, neither of them moves. Her hand lingers just a heartbeat too long before she realizes and pulls back, her composure returning with a practiced grace. But he catches the flicker in her eyes, that same awareness mirrored back at him. She isn't indifferent. She felt it too. The silence afterward is charged, but not uncomfortable. He chooses not to call attention to it, respecting the fragile space between them. Instead, he continues talking, softer now, more deliberate, as though they've stepped into a different kind of conversation, one beneath the surface, one where every pause carries weight. The narrator lets the audience into his thoughts, the way her touch still burns gently against his skin, the way he's suddenly aware of how close their chairs are, how her perfume mingles with the faint smell of coffee, how time seems to slow when her gaze meets his. It's not a declaration, not yet, but it's a spark that both acknowledge silently. Keynote 3 closes with them parting ways again, she gathering her things, him watching quietly, but this time the goodbye feels heavier. A touch had bridged them, and though it was brief, it changed everything. Their encounters have started to feel less like chance and more like ritual. There is an unspoken understanding now. When they sit down together, the world outside seems to fade. What once began as small talk has grown into conversations that wander through books, music, places they dream of visiting. Yet beneath the surface of their laughter and easy flow, he senses something guarded in her. This time, the shift comes late in the evening. The cafe is quieter than usual, the rain tapping softly against the window. She seems different tonight, her posture slightly less poised, her eyes carrying a shadow that even her practiced smile can't quite hide. He notices, as he always does, and for a moment he hesitates, torn between letting it pass and asking the question that might open a door she usually keeps shut. Finally, with the kind of sincerity that makes his voice softer, he asks, "Are you all right?" The simplicity of the question disarms her. She looks at him, surprised, then away, as though debating whether to answer honestly. When she finally speaks, her words come measured but real. She admits, carefully, that life hasn't been simple. That she has carried responsibilities, expectations, and disappointments that have shaped her into someone both strong and tired. She doesn't share details, not yet, but the weight in her tone makes clear that these are scars she rarely lets anyone see. He listens, truly listens. No interruptions, no attempts to fix. Just his quiet presence, the steady way his eyes hold hers, the silence that lets her feel safe enough to continue. As she speaks, her hand absently traces the rim of her cup, a small nervous gesture that betrays the vulnerability beneath her calm. For him, this is the moment he realizes she trusts him, even if only a little. It humbles him, the idea that someone older, someone so composed, would let him glimpse a side of her that others might never see. He doesn't offer advice, doesn't turn her pain into a lesson. Instead, he responds gently, with words that reassure her she's not alone, that he admires the strength she carries even when she doesn't feel it. Her eyes soften, a quiet gratitude flickering there, and for the first time, she lets her hand rest on the table, close enough that when his fingers brush against hers, she doesn't pull away. It's not bold, it's not rushed, it's simply human, the kind of touch that says, I hear you. I'm here. Keynote 4 closes with that shared silence, two hands resting close, two hearts quietly acknowledging the shift. Vulnerability has entered their bond, and with it, a deeper intimacy neither can ignore. The rhythm of their meetings has become a quiet certainty. Neither of them admits it, but both have started shaping their days around these encounters. What once felt like chance has turned into something they look forward to, though unspoken. Tonight, the setting feels different, heavier, more intimate. The cafe lights are dimmer, the crowd thinner, the air scented faintly with roasted beans and rain-soaked pavement. They sit across from each other, yet closer than usual, chairs angled in a way that makes the space between them feel smaller. Their conversation drifts, softer than before, punctuated by pauses that don't need to be filled. Each silence hums with unspoken thoughts, a gentle pressure that grows with every glance held too long. She's the first to notice it. Her hands fold together in her lap, then return to her cup, fingers fidgeting as though to ground herself. She tries to speak casually, but her voice carries a faint tremor, not of fear, but of awareness. He notices everything, the way her lashes lower when his gaze lingers, the way she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, revealing the elegant curve of her jaw. For him, it's a battle between restraint and desire. He doesn't want to push, doesn't want to risk breaking the fragile trust she's begun to place in him. And yet, every detail about her seems to draw him closer, the warmth of her laugh, the steadiness of her presence, the quiet vulnerability she revealed only nights ago. He feels it in his chest, heavy and restless, a longing that isn't about rushing forward, but about savoring the nearness of her. Then, a small accident tips the balance. As he leans forward to reach for his glass, their hands brush, not lightly this time, but fully, palm against palm, fingers grazing before either can retreat. The contact lingers a fraction longer than politeness allows. She freezes, her breath catching ever so slightly, her eyes meeting his in a moment that feels like the room has collapsed into silence. There's no kiss. No declaration. Just that suspended second where both of them realize what they've been avoiding, the truth that their connection is no longer casual, no longer simple. Her hand slips away at last, but she doesn't mask it with laughter or deflection. Instead, she holds his gaze, her lips parting as though to say something, but the words never arrive. The silence that follows is thick, almost unbearable, yet neither breaks it. She looks down, her composure faltering just enough for him to see the conflict in her eyes, the tug of longing against the caution of experience. He feels the same, caught between restraint and the pull of something undeniable. Keynote 5 closes with them leaving together, stepping out into the cool night air. The distance between their bodies is careful, but every brush of their arms as they walk sends a quiet shiver through him. The tension has reached its peak, spoken in silence, felt in every step. The night after their quiet walk together lingers in his thoughts like a song he can't stop replaying. Every brush of her arm against his, every glance in the soft streetlight, every silence heavy with things unsaid, it replays endlessly. He knows she felt it too. That spark wasn't one-sided. But when the next evening comes, and he finds her again, there's something different in her eyes. She greets him with a smile, but it doesn't reach the softness it usually carries. Her voice is steady, but the pauses between her words stretch longer, as if she's weighing each one before releasing it. He senses the distance, the careful step backward. She's building walls again, and it unsettles him. Their conversation drifts, lighter than before, circling safe topics, the weather, her workday, a book she's reading. But he can feel the absence of what had been growing between them, like a river dammed by fear. When their hands nearly touch on the table, she withdraws too quickly, the motion small but sharp. Finally, she sighs. Her fingers twist the handle of her cup, a nervous gesture that betrays what her words haven't said yet. "I'm not sure this is wise," she murmurs, almost to herself. The sentence hangs in the air, fragile and unfinished. He doesn't push. Instead, he waits, his chest tight, his voice gentle when he asks, "Why?" Her eyes flicker to his, then away. She admits the truth in fragments. She's older, with a life shaped by responsibilities, expectations, and unspoken judgments. People would question it. They would question her. She's not sure she can afford to let herself feel something she knows will be complicated. Her honesty cuts him, not because she doesn't care, but because it proves she does. He listens quietly, resisting the urge to argue or to close the gap between them with touch. He wants to tell her that what he feels is real, that age means nothing compared to the way she makes him feel seen, but he knows timing matters. So instead, he offers something softer, reassurance. Not with promises, not with pressure, but with the steadiness of his presence. His eyes hold hers, unwavering, telling her without words that he understands. That he's not going anywhere. The moment ends with silence, heavy but not hopeless. She gathers her things, her movements careful, her smile faint but tinged with conflict. As she walks away, he feels both the ache of her hesitation and the pull of her heart still caught between them. Keynote 6 closes with him sitting in that silence, knowing the story isn't ending, but that the final step will require courage from them both. Days pass more slowly after that conversation, as though the air itself carries the weight of what wasn't said. He replays her words, her hesitation, her quiet fear of what others might think. And yet, beneath all of it, he remembers the way her hand lingered against his, the way her eyes softened before she pulled away. It wasn't rejection. It was fear wrapped around longing. Tonight, the cafe is quieter than usual. He almost doesn't expect to see her again, but when the door opens and she steps inside, his chest tightens with relief. She hesitates at the entrance, scanning the room, and when her gaze finds him, there's a flicker in her expression, a mixture of doubt and something gentler, something hopeful. She joins him at the table. Their words at first are cautious, polite, circling safe ground. Yet beneath the conversation, there's a current pulling them closer, the kind of gravity that neither of them can deny any longer. Her laughter returns, softer this time but genuine, and when it does, he feels the walls she built beginning to crack. Finally, he speaks, not with bold declarations, but with quiet honesty. "I don't care about the numbers between us," he says, his voice steady. "I care about how I feel when I'm with you. And I know you feel it too." Her eyes drop to the table, her fingers tightening around the cup. For a moment, she doesn't answer. Then she exhales, a long, trembling breath, and admits in a whisper, "I do." That's what makes it harder. Silence stretches, heavy with choice. He could let it go, allow fear to dictate the ending. Or he could offer her the one thing she hasn't allowed herself to believe, that sometimes, even when life complicates everything, the simplest truth is worth holding on to. So he reaches across the table, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His hand covers hers, warm, steady. This time, she doesn't move. Her eyes lift to his, uncertain but shining with something she can't disguise anymore. The moment feels endless. Around them, the world continues, cups clinking, rain whispering against glass, but for them, time narrows into this one fragile, certain truth. He squeezes her hand gently, not to claim her, but to anchor her. To say without words, "You don't have to be afraid." Not with me. Her smile comes then, small at first, then fuller, tinged with relief. She turns her hand beneath his, their fingers intertwining, and the weight of hesitation finally falls away. There's no kiss, no grand gesture, just the warmth of hands clasped across a table, and the kind of eye contact that feels like a promise. When they part later that night, they don't need to define what this is. The choice has already been made. Not in words, but in the quiet courage of two people daring to hold on to something real, despite everything. Keynote 7 closes with him narrating softly, sometimes love doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes, it begins with a glance, grows in silence, and becomes undeniable in the gentlest touch.